Hey everyone, it's three questions with Ellen Linnihan. There we go. All right. All right. Ellen has actually been on the podcast a long time ago, and it's like every time she has a new book, we got to have her on. So, Ellen, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
And Ellen's actually taking time out of a conference. She's not skipping any sessions or anything like that. So she's part of it too. But it graced me with some time during this. She has a new book out called Teacher Time Management: How to Prioritize Your Day so you can enjoy your evening. Not that anyone would want to do that, right? Strategies to maximize time management and avoid teacher burnout. So we're going to talk a little bit about the book, but for those who don't know you, because it's been a while since you've been on the podcast, just if you can start with a little introduction of yourself, what you do today, how you got there, I think it's a great place to start.
Yeah, well, I'm a public school teacher in Wisconsin in the Elbert School District. I teach English and public speaking, and I teach that advanced courses like AP Lang, and then also the dual enrollment courses through the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. So that's how I spend my day. And I've just discovered that when you maximize your time and really find those little windows of opportunity throughout the day to really do things when you're supposed to be doing them, you've got time for a lot of other things. So actually your journey, your fitness journey, really inspired me, honestly. Like I
Really?
was so impressed that you are posting your before and after photos. I'm like, so I haven't posted any, but I have taken them. And it was super inspirational to me to see that journey for you. I'm like, just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean that I have to like only have a brain and not have,
Yeah.
from the shoulders down. So I've prioritized, I do Pilates every day, eating much better than I used to eat and just feeling really good about it. But I'm able to prioritize my health now because I've kind of figured out how to manage my workload so that it's not taking up my whole day. It's taking up an appropriate part of my day, I guess.
I
So
actually had no idea that I never, people kind of mention stuff and then I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. So yeah, it is something really important to me. And it's actually interesting because I always kind of block off time and it's like, do not look at email, do not talk to anybody. This is for me to exercise. And what's fascinating about that is I feel like I'm way better at my work, right?
Mhm.
And I think that if you don't, I think that you might have less time to work, but it's way better time. Is that a fair statement? Is that how you
Absolutely.
feel?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay. Well, we're and that is I really appreciate what you said about social media too, because I'm always about this that if you just focus on teaching and education, then people actually will start to talk negatively to you because they don't see you as a human being. So like
Right.
really kind of show your human side and you just happen to be an educator, not like an educator that happens to be a human. So I think
Hmm.
that's really fascinating. I do have to ask you this because it's something I'm very passionate about. You said you teach public speaking to students. Like what's some of the things that you actually teach them through that process? Like what do they do? How do they utilize it? I'd love to know about that.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my favorite things to teach because it's the one skill that you can't pay somebody else to do for you.
Hmm.
Right? Like pretty much everything in this life, you could pay somebody to outsource just about anything, but their own voice, regardless of what they do, whether they're going to be a professional, or they're going to, be a stay-home parent, they're going to have to talk to somebody at some point. And having confidence to own your voice is such a huge part of humanity. So seeing them grow from, I do these attendance questions every day where they have to answer a question of the day. It's how I take attendance alphabetically. And it's just silly things like, oh gosh, I'm not teaching today, so I don't have it written right on my board to tell you exactly. But could it just be a tell me something good?
Right.
And there's something good that day might be mom made pancakes this morning, or maybe it was, I woke up a half hour before my alarm and I got to go back to sleep. Right. So
Right.
there's something goods all over the place. But watching them walk up to the front of the classroom every single day and answer a simple question, it builds community in the classroom, but it also helps us to get to know each other. It builds their confidence. Starts to break down those barriers that a lot of kids, especially in this day and age, they're so glued to their devices
Mm,
that they will do just about anything to avoid actual speaking, to
mm.
verbal speaking. And so I do a lot of things to break down those barriers. And, there's lots of different units. We do a business unit, we do a demo speech, but probably my most favorite thing we do is at the very end of the course. It's only 9 weeks, but on the very last day, we have what I call a fake wedding. and we set it up like a wedding
Right.
reception. And I've got background reception music playing, and they sit with pods of friends, move their desks together, and I bring in sparkling Sprite and glasses, whatever. So they have drawn names of somebody like a month before. So
Mm.
they can kind of creep on that person for about a month. And then they have to stand up and make a toast to
Oh,
that person
wow.
on the last day. And there's no structure to the class at all for that last day, except to say somebody's got the glass with the spoon to ding when it's time. And then once you make your toast, I toast to George. Now I hand the glass to you. And
Oh, wow.
then you wait for a time to stand up and ding. And eventually we get through the whole class. And that's the only agenda for the day, is just to toast everybody. But it's such a real life skill for them to, like feel the room, know when it's a good time to stand up, and even to know like which way do I face. I'm sitting with my back to most of the audience. I'm like, well, logically then probably you would turn and face the whole crowd instead of just your little table. So just real life skills like that, super fun to teach and see that in action.
It's really interesting because I'm working with Forney ISD in Forney, Texas, and they're doing like a lot of entrepreneurship, students creating businesses. And one of the things I talk to the students about is you can have the best idea in the world, but if no one knows about it, it doesn't matter. So like
Right.
even when you're thinking about public speaking, it's not, what I do is doing keynotes and, speaking at conferences, but it's actually having that ability to share and, kind of convince someone of an idea, even, and it's something I always challenge with teachers, which I find fascinating. I'll ask them like, hey, why don't you like blog or write something? They're like, I have nothing to contribute. Like I really have nothing good to share. And I always say, oh, so if I was interviewing you for a job, would that be your answer? And they're like, no. And so there's that kind of, and there's like a humbleness to it, which obviously I appreciate, but you do have to advocate for yourself. And especially in education right now, you have a lot of people that have not advocated for themselves, and then stories are told by outsiders about what education is, and then we're like, well, we need to share our voice. So I think that's a really, like as you said, it is totally relevant to anything that you do, not just if you're public speaking. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit about your book. And you mentioned something. I'm going to ask you something very specific about it in a second. But can you kind of just give the 1 to 2 minute overview, because
Sure.
obviously this is probably more than ever. And I wouldn't even say this is just in teaching. People are just overwhelmed, exhausted, having a hard time to like, deal with their, how they utilize time, how they leverage time. And I'm really big on this. You and I have 24 hours. I don't get more hours than anybody else. How you leverage it really, really matters. So give us a little bit overview of this new book.
Right, absolutely. I mean, you hit it. One of my quotes in the book is, we all get the same number of minutes in our day, right? It's a question of how do we use them, right? How am I going to put those to work for me? And there are so many. Here's an analogy that I love to use. So rolling out cookies when you're making sugar cookies, right? You've got the cookie cutters and making the different shapes, whatever. Most people have done that at least one point in their life as a kid. And when you do that, you put the cookie cutters down as closely as you can to each other, right? But you're still going to have those little scraps in between, those scraps of dough. And so the question is, what do you do with that dough
Hmm.
once you've made your shapes, right? Most people will either roll it out again and make new cookies, or maybe form new shapes with letters or something, but or maybe eat them. But literally nobody just throws that in the garbage,
Right.
right? And so we can recognize that value. But when it comes to our time, when things don't perfectly butt up together, what do we do with those spaces in between? So that last 5 minutes of class, or that maybe awkward time when kids are digging through their folders and looking for whatever they need to turn in. Like, what are you doing during that time that you could be putting to better use? Right. And so basically what I figured out is that we've pretty much got three different modes in teaching, and maybe in life for everybody. I'm a teacher, so that's how my mind works. But there are appropriate times to do certain things, right? And so if it's low concentration mode, kids might be asking questions, they might need help, you might be having to monitor. But what else could you be doing during that time that would maybe be taking up time later in the day that you don't have to use it then
Mhm.
to do? So
Right.
like maybe it's as simple as just testing your whiteboard markers. Like, oh, doesn't work. I'm sick of grabbing the purple one. It never works, right? Well, throw it away, right? So maybe taking some time just organizationally in the classroom to kind of organize yourself so that you don't spend even 15 minutes after school one day sticking around doing that kind of managerial stuff that you could be using those little scraps of time to do. And that's just one example. There's a million things that we can be doing. And once you start to recognize this is an appropriate time to do this kind of activity, and this is a better time to do this type of activity, and having the discipline to recognize and kind of read the room of where are my students right now? Are they literally there? Are they physically there? Or is this prep time? What types of things should I be doing right now to maximize those minutes? Because our teacher minutes, that's our most valuable resource, right? And if we can use them more effectively, then I'm not sticking around after school or taking the work home with me or wasting my weekends doing things that I could have maybe squeezed in if I'd used my time more wisely during the school day. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, like recognizing those modes.
And like there's a concept that, and I don't know where this originally came from, but I think about it all the time, is basically doing stuff that your future you would appreciate. So
yes,
something I do, we were
actually, it's TikTok you. That's my line. TikTok you does not want to be doing this at 11:30 tonight, right? Let's think about TikTok you, because that they can resonate with, right? Like that one they get.
Well, yeah, like even, we were talking about health and wellness. And one of the things I do the night before, and I have like kind of my schedule of what I'm going to do for exercise each week, and like a big goals, and kind of go small goals, medium goals, big goals, and like the small goals kind of do them every single day. But little things like having my workout clothes in the morning, ready to go, right? Ready to go. So I just don't even think about it. And it's kind of taking, away. I think one of the things that teachers really struggle with is decision fatigue. It's always just kind of have to make this decision or this, this idea or whatever. And so if you can kind of get rid of some of those things, maybe in your personal life, I think there's something really, really powerful about that. Cause like, I'm always thinking about like, what would future you appreciate right now? Like, if you do this and take that off too. So what do you, when people read this book, what's the hope in what it is meant to achieve, with teachers right now?
Right. Well, I think one of the biggest things is teachers kind of have this, I don't want to say a martyr complex, but it kind of is this sense of like, if I'm not putting in all of this extra time, I must not be doing a good job. Like this sense of, almost feeling guilty about leaving work at work. And I feel like we need to kind of shift that thinking to the point where we're using our time more wisely so that we're better teachers, and we'll be better teachers if we're better human beings. And being a better human being in my mind means being healthy, right? And a big part of that is working out and eating right. So if we can use those minutes more efficiently during the school day, we're gonna have more time for ourselves, for our family, for our personal life in the evening outside of the day. And so that's my goal, teaching people how to recognize the opportunities that they already have in their life, rather than feeling like, oh, I've got to carve out all this time to do this big thing for work. Learning how to chunk things down, using that time more efficiently. And then also for me, I recognize that there are certain things that I really love to do. Like I love to do social media graphics for my club. There are things that I like to do, but they aren't necessarily high concentration activities. And so when I get that chunk of time during my prep time, the last thing I should be doing is creating social media graphics or doing LinkedIn posts, that sort of thing, because that's something that I could theoretically be doing in the evening while I'm watching TV mindlessly. Right. And I don't mind doing it because I enjoy it. So recognizing and having the discipline to say, okay, this is high concentration time. I need to have a plan for it before it even starts, because the time to plan for it is not when you sit down to do it, because you're going to take maybe 10 minutes of that time away, right? You got to hit the ground running. So having things planned out so that you're ready to go and hit the ground running when you get to those modes is super important. And then having the discipline to stay with it. So maybe it means leaving your phone at your desk, or maybe put your phone on the other side of the classroom, or your computer on the other side of the classroom, whatever it is that's distracting to you. Eliminate the distractions so that you can focus on the high concentration activities when you've got the time to actually do those things.
There's a lot of stuff about, and I've talked about this quite a bit. People are probably sick of me bringing it up. There's a lot of stuff about Jonathan Haidt, anxious generation, phones and stuff like this. And one of the things that you just said that I think is really important to me is, like, if you think kids are the only ones who have an issue, then you're kidding yourself. And that strategy that you just shared is actually something we should be teaching kids, because it doesn't just come naturally as an adult. And
Mhm.
and if you use this as an adult, you have more credibility with kids when you say, yeah, listen, sometimes I actually do social media, and there's also times where I put my phone away, don't use it. Like I don't have any notifications on my phone ever. Never, ever, ever. I only go to my phone when I choose to. It never brings me to it. And that's something that really, really matters. This is my last question. I'm like, I kind of have a feeling I know what you're going to say on this.
Okay.
I got into, I would say, a little bit of an argument. I don't know. Maybe a debate would be a better terminology, with somebody saying that basically we have to teach our administrators to not email people after hours and schedule them. I'm like, nah, you can't really control what other people do. What you should focus on is actually not looking at your email. That to me, because I can't control every single person, whether they email me at certain times. And but it's also like you create a boundary. Now, if your administrator is saying you need to check your email after hours, that's a totally different conversation. But it's like they shouldn't be looking because it might be there, so I might have to check. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like you have to learn to create that boundary. Where would you be in that spectrum? I'm like, really? I kind of have an
Well,
idea
I
because
will tell you,
yeah,
I was in Florida over spring break, and
yeah,
I got a text from my principal in the middle of spring break, which is very unusual.
yeah.
And he said, 8 days for a conference? Really? I was like, oh shoot. No, I'm not going to an 8-day conference. It's a 1-day conference, and I totally screwed up how I entered that in. So
Ah,
that's a good context of like he needed to know, because he wasn't just going to approve 8
right,
days.
right,
And waiting until I got back seems silly. I didn't mind a text to clarify, right?
right,
So in that regard, I'm like, I've got certain people set on VIP because I want to know.
right.
I know that if my principal is going to email me something or text me something, it's important. And so I want to get a notification, and then I can look at it, when I get to my phone to do that. But I think the timer feature is super important, and that I know my principal does this, and I do this as well for my weekly communications with my parents, understanding that just because I'm working on this right now doesn't mean
Right.
that audience that's going to receive it is ready for it right now. So learning how to schedule things, getting that message out, when people are going to be most receptive to processing that information is important. But if it's truly an emergency, I guess I'm more of a work-life blend person
Yeah.
rather than partitioning it out. I don't feel like I can totally separate from work, because I mean, you can't control when a good idea is going to hit,
Right.
right? So to
Totally.
say that I only work at work and I only do
Right.
home life at home, you're not really human if you are completely separating like that. But taking the time then maybe to spend on it is a different story.
I schedule emails to people like at 3:14 a.m. so they think I'm a workaholic. Right? Wow, what's this guy doing up so late? Just the most,
Crazy.
not like a tree. It's got to be some weird. No, I'm just kidding. But
That's awesome.
that actually, that is something I've had a lot of conversations with teachers about, is because I know it's a weird thing, and I think it's all personal how you work, like how you function, and you have to figure that out for yourself. So as a principal, I had no issue with my teachers checking personal messages during work, checking whatever. My
Mhm.
only concern was, were they good? That's it. I just wanted them
Yeah.
to be good. And some people, I'm this guy. I need to check out sometimes. I just need to do other stuff, maybe personal stuff. Like if I'm like thinking about something that's going on and I don't check it, doesn't, then I can't focus on what's in front of me.
Mhm.
Whereas some people are like, no, when I'm at work, I am 100% at work. And when I'm at home, I am 100% at home. And I'm okay with either. Basically, it's like you have to figure out what works for you.
Mhm.
And at different points in my life, I worked way different than I do today. Like I am very chunks now. Like this is when I do this. And then now this is shut off. And now this is that time, right? This is my personal time. So
Mhm.
that's something I think is a really good advice, because, like you said, you're different times of your life. There's times where you're really inspired by something. You're not like, oh no, this doesn't fit in column A, right? So it is kind of figure that out. So any last thoughts? Like if you get this book as a teacher, what is the biggest thing that you hope to achieve?
I really hope that people feel like I'm giving them the gift of duplicating themselves,
Hmm.
finding ways to stretch themselves to the point where they're using that time so efficiently that they feel like they have more time in the day. Like I think we all know people that we go, how do they get it all done? How do they, how do they do all that? And it's really about their time management and how they're using those minutes because we all, like I said, we all get the same number of minutes, but how do we use them? Are we wasting time scrolling? Are we doing things like trying to grade essays at a time when kids are in high demand asking questions mode? That's just an exercise in frustration.
Right.
Like you're going to get through half as many in twice the amount of time and you're going to be frustrated, right? But learning when to do those things, you might find, wow, I can really zip through those if I save just that one short answer question to do in my high concentration mode. I can do all the other stuff in the short, in my lower concentration mode times, and just starting to recognize those things, learning how to chunk things. I mean, I'll be honest, I got to the point where I was almost kind of bored. Like I wound things up early at the end of a term and I'm like, what do I do now? I've got things wired. I got
If
next
you
fall
could,
planned out,
if this
right?
book helps people do that, that would be
Yeah, I
amazing.
mean, and
So
that's my hope. Like
awesome.
you don't have to sacrifice your life, to be a teacher. I think you can be a great teacher and model excellent living, to the best of your ability with your health and your just your enthusiasm for life. I don't get inspired by somebody walking into a classroom looking like they're approaching the guillotine. Like like
Right,
what how could that be inspirational to my
right,
students? Like I've got
right.
to be living a good life myself to model that for them.
Love it. Well, congratulations on the new book. And anyone listening or watching this on YouTube, Teacher Time Management, How to Prioritize Your Day So You Can Enjoy Your Evening by Ellen Linnihan is available now. So you can check it out in the link down below. Ellen, thanks so much for being on the podcast. And thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.